Hi, guys. So, do you guys remember the person who posts Sprunki Kids show screenshots? Yeah, I am their cousin. Recently, they introduced me to the show when I was staying over for the night. Now, it didn't exactly pique my interest at first, especially since I found it weird how a person who was well into their high school years was still watching a cartoon that was made for 7-year-olds at most. However, as I watched more episodes with my cousin, I grew a bit intrigued by it, specifically on its history and backstory. I asked my cousin where they got these episodes from, and they told me they had found it in a Google Drive file posted by a user. I asked who the user was, and they said that their name was NyankoBFLol. Moronic name, I know. Anyway, after I went home, I decided to do some research for myself, even checking out NyankoBFLol's profile for myself. To my surprise, I found out he had a Discord account, so I decided to chat with him. I sent him a simple message, hello, and after a few hours, he finally responded back. We chatted back and forth for a bit, talking about casual things like our hobbies, lives, etc. After a bit, I decided to bring up the question about the Sprunki show. I asked him, how did you end up finding out about the Sprunki show? It took a few moments of silence before he finally responded. He explained that he had stumbled upon the show purely by chance. He was vacationing in America and was staying at a hotel for the time being. The hotel didn't have much entertainment and was quite boring. One day, he decided to head out of the hotel for a bit to cure his boredom. He eventually came across a flea market that sold various toys, clothes, and other novelty knickknacks of the sort. He then came across what looked to be a VHS that contained every episode ever made for Sprunki. He remembered how the TV in his hotel room had a VHS player. At first, he was hesitant to purchase it, seeing as how he was too old for kids' shows, but he was keen on curing his boredom while on his stay, so he gave in and bought it. It was fairly cheap, only $1.60. He took it back to his hotel room, unboxed the VHS and placed it into the VHS player. He ended up being intrigued by it and decided to share the episodes with the rest of the world to see if anyone else remembered the show. He started recording them from the VHS player and adding subtitles to them for the sake of convenience. He would then upload them as a Google Drive file, as MP4 files. He explained it was actually quite fun, and it gave him something to do while he was on vacation. Out of curiosity, I asked what else he knew about the show, not expecting much of a response. Shockingly, he did say he knew something else about the show, something that not many people knew of. He ended up looking into the show's history himself and found out it aired from the spring of 2002, all the way to the winter of 2004. Everything was going well until a hijacking occurred at the show's studio, which led to the cancellation of the show and the eventual bankruptcy of the studio behind it. He thought that was all for the show's history, until he found out some additional information about the show that he found quite shocking. While at a coffee shop with one of the hotel's tenants, he was explaining his findings of the Sprunki show. The friend explained that he had some additional information that might be useful to his research. Apparently, in 2010, roughly 6 years after the cancellation of Sprunki, an announcement was made by Dusty Enterprises, a company that specializes in various kinds of entertainment, including games, music, and even TV shows, announced a new project that was in the works over at their studio, an animated TV show aimed for young adults. The pilot for the said project would be aired at the Creative Minds Film Festival, which was being held in the fall of that year. Sadly, not many people would show up to the film festival, mainly due to poor and negligent marketing from the people behind the festival. However, those who came to the event were in for quite a surprise. At the film festival, various pilots for upcoming projects were aired. When it came time to showcase the last of the films, the handful of people who showed up were met with a pleasant surprise. It turns out that the last film for the event was the anticipated project that Dusty Enterprises had been preparing, a pilot for what looked like a revival series for the Sprunki TV show from 2002, titled Sprunki, Back in Business, with the pilot being called Demonic Drug Trip. It seemed like the show was leaning in the direction of those shows that try to take a children's IP and change it to fit a more mature demographic, such as Velma, Riverdale, Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey, and so on. I immediately knew this wasn't going to end well. Thankfully, I was wrong. Well, for the most part. According to NyankoBFLol, many things were changed in the revival that weren't present in the original 2000s show. He provided me with a list of all the changes between the revival and the original show. The runtime between the pilot and the 2000s show was changed. In the 2000s show, the average runtime of an episode was 11 minutes, with double-length specials being 22 minutes long. The pilot, for the revival series, was roughly 1 hour long. The designs of the characters were radically altered. The 2000s show had simple character designs with some added details here and there. The revival series made the designs more complex and detailed. For example, Simon, the enthusiastic and friendly yellow alien in the 2000s show, was dressed in feminine and revealing clothing, including a bra. Some of the characters didn't have any clothing at all, except pants. Another example would be Abby, one of the characters from the 2000s show who was a fish character. Her outfit had changed from a simple oversized dark green jacket and red beach shorts to a full-on scene core outfit that matched the scene core aesthetic from the early 2000s. The personalities of some characters were changed. Wanda, who was known for being a friendly, quirky, and energetic extroverted white cat in the 2000s show, was now changed to be a rude, unlikable, loud-mouthed, and opinionated bitch who didn't give two shits about anybody but herself. Abby, who was known to be a laid-back, caring, and loyal girl who was eager to explore new things about the world, was changed to an insecure and hopeless drug addict with low self-esteem, who was struggling to break free from her addiction. I could go on, but these two are just examples. The lore of the characters was changed. Tunner and Brood are now father and son, as opposed to just being friends in the 2000s show, and it is heavily implied that Veneria is Tunner's ex. Gray and Wanda are now siblings, which again juxtaposed with the idea that they were friends in the 2000s show, and their parents are Jivan, and a mysterious figure known as Black. It also implies that Jivan and Black are married. Spy, a 14-year-old bear cub in the 2000s show, now had a cane adorned with stickers and was hinted at having some kind of chronic pain in his hips. I could go on, but these are just some examples. Now, onto the pilot for the revival itself. I asked if NyankoBFLol has any footage for the pilot. To my surprise, he said he had a video recording of the pilot that his coffee shop friend recorded on his phone, as his friend was one of the attendants at the event. I asked if he could send me the footage, which he did. I watched the recording, which was of a rather low quality, but it was understandable, seeing as how the pilot was recorded from a phone. It was difficult to hear the dialogue from some people whispering and murmuring in the crowd, but I'll try to explain it to the best of my abilities. The plot for the pilot would be that Abby, who had just come back from a terrible day and a fight with Veneria, who, mind you, is Abby's best friend in the original show, attempts to relax and unwind for the night. She eventually got bored and tried to find a way to entertain herself. She looks over to a couple of ecstasy pills nearby, and wonders if she could pop a few and go out to a club somewhere to party. However, just as she is about to pop a pill, she stops herself, remembering she's been trying to stray away from drugs for 1 month at this point, and she didn't want to break her streak. Unfortunately, this resistance didn't last long, as she ended up popping a pill of ecstasy, then another, until she overdosed on the drug. Eventually, she went into a manic frenzy and started going crazy all over the place, until she suddenly began to feel dizzy and lightheaded. She soon stumbles about looking for help, before eventually fainting and being dragged off by a mysterious figure. When she wakes up, we find out who this mysterious figure is, Gray. He had dragged Abby back to his home, after she found her passed out. Abby attempted to speak but ended up throwing up all over the floor. This sends Abby into a panic, realizing she may have overdosed and relapsed. Gray tries to calm Abby down, to no avail. Suddenly, a knock is heard at Gray's room door, which makes Gray anxious. He hastily shoved Abby into a closet and told her to stay quiet. It's revealed that the knocking came from Wanda, who had come to irritate Gray. She started saying all sorts of mean and horrible things about Gray, such as how his taste in music was shit, and how much of a retarded hermit he was. Eventually, Abby couldn't take the stuffiness of the closet and came out of it, still woozy from the effects of the drug. Wenda, much like a little kid trying to get their sibling in trouble, started to tease Gray about how he disobeyed their parents, as they are not allowed to have guests over when they're home alone. Gray started pleading and negotiating with Wenda, saying things like, "Please don't tell Dad," or "Dad is gonna kill me." Yeah, I forgot to mention that Gray can talk in this pilot, as opposed to just humming his sentences in the original show. Eventually, Wenda decides to strike a deal with her brother. She tells Gray that, if they can go grab some tacos from the gas station downtown, she won't tell their dads about letting Abby into the house without their permission. Not sure how they managed to dodge a bullet with the copyright infringement, but whatever. The two head over to Jimin's car, dragging Abby along with them. Gray sits in the driver's seat, Wenda in the passenger seat, and Abby sits in the back. As they drove along the highway, with the radio playing Metallica Myuu, Gray accidentally swerved too hard while trying to overtake a vehicle and ended up swerving off the road. When they wake up, they find that they've crashed the car. Gray starts panicking and tells Wenda they need to call the police. Wenda stubbornly refuses, stating that she still wants to get her tacos from the gas station, like the idiot she was. The rest of the episode was then focused on Gray and Wenda trying to find a way to the gas station and eventually try to get back home, all while trying to babysit the drugged out Abby, who regularly disrupted their plans. I had to admit, I had a couple of issues with this pilot, and that's mainly because of Wenda. Oh my god, did she make this torturous to watch? She's such an entitled and self-centered brat. I mean, why exactly did they decide to change her personality for no reason? She just treats everyone around her like garbage and I can't fucking stand it. The scene, where she was taunting Abby about her drug problems, was needlessly cruel and thrown in there only for the sake of being edgy. To be honest, it went on for too long, so much so to the point where it felt cruel. Hell, the scene where Abby was thinking about self-harm a few moments later was downright dark and depressing. Speaking of Abby, you could say she's one of the few decent characters here, but even she has her bad moments, like when she criticized Gray for taking a liking to Metallica and their music, calling it dogshit. Compared to Wenda, though, she's not all bad, and the scene where she beat the shit out of Wenda after being taunted about her drug issues was kind of satisfying, not gonna lie. However, I do think she deserved better in this revival. I didn't like how this pilot portrayed drug addicts and the problems with drug abuse in general, since I feel it could be offensive to some. Not to mention the aforementioned self-harm scene. I think my favorite character out of the trio would have to be Gray. He's pretty down-to-earth, mature, and a good voice of reason. The scene where he was trying to comfort Abby after she told him about her issues was kind of heartwarming. The cursing. Oh my god, the cursing. While most of it came from Wenda, there was a lot of harsh language being tossed around in this pilot, including the word retarded and jackass. See, this is why I don't trust these kinds of revivals. There were some good things about it though. I liked the new designs for the characters and the thought that was put into their clothing. Too bad they weren't on screen often. Another thing I enjoyed about the pilot was the new animation style. Overall, it was a mixed bag. Not as bad or offensive as Velma, but it did have its issues. So, what happened after the pilot, you ask? Well, towards the very end of the pilot's screening, a release date for summer 2011 was shown alongside the Dusty Enterprises logo. However, when 2011 rolled around, there was radio silence about the revival, and eventually, people just assumed that the revival had been cancelled. The only proof of the pilot's existence so far has been a postcard that was handed out at the end of the film festival, which is pictured here. That kind of sucks, because I still have so many questions about the lore for this revival. Why did Tunner and Veneria break up? Why are Jimin and Black Wenda and Gray's dads? How did Abby become a drug addict? I guess we'll never know. If you have any information about the revival of this show, please contact me. I need to know as much information as possible about this revival.